All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular the AWD1100 C# programming class, I've been doing a series of videos that kind of correlate with the chapters in our textbook. And what I've done thus far is I've created about different lectures for the first 6 chapters of the book. All right. In chapter 1, I did not do much of anything but other than just kind of give an overview of what I'd be doing. In chapter 2, I actually created a payroll console application. In chapter 3, I created a Windows Forms payroll application, which I've been refining in chapters 4, 5, and 6. But what I've decided to do was to go back, because in chapter 5, I should say, 5 and 6, I really didn't go over control structures, all of them, because it's harder, in my humble opinion, to come up with doing a lot of looping in a GUI program as opposed to doing a lot of looping in a console program. So what I have done, just kind of an FYI for you, is I have gone in here and I have created, let's see, where is it? What I called Chapter06-Console. And what I've done in here is I've simply copied in the original console program that I've done. And what I'd like to try to do right now is to grab this forms application that I did for the previous chapter in chapter 6, and I'm literally going to grab all of the code that's in there. I'm going to throw it into for now at least, just a simple text editor, meaning I'm going to put it into here, and I'm going to attempt to massage it, so to speak, and have it work in the updated console program. Okay, so see what I have to change and what I don't have to change, etc. So these will still be my global variables right here. So I'm going to start with those and my global constants. So I'm going to grab all of that, copy it to the clipboard, come into my console program, which is right here, and I'm going to remove basically everything that I've got in main right now. All right, and I'm going to start by coming in here and putting in those global variables and those global constants. We'll see how this works, and if it doesn't, then this video will never see the light of day, I guess. So I now have, just lock there, that's fine. So I've got my global constants and I've got my global variables. Normally I'm a lot more anal about this, but they're lined up. That's good enough. All right. So next, this calculate routine. As it says, this method is run when the calculate button is clicked, and it's going to do the same stuff as before. Now, I'm going to try to do the same kind of thing that I did previously. However, there's no button click in here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to call calculate. I'm going to do that in main. So I'm going to call calculate first of all in here. Now I'm going to get an error, as you'd probably guess, because I don't have a routine called calculate right now. So I'm going to create that. I'm going to have to make some changes because of the differences between console applications and non-console applications or GUI applications. So in this calculate routine, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in the, let's see. And actually that the comment doesn't make a lot of sense now. So let me come in here and I'll write the calculate routine, and I'm going to get errors like crazy because it's underneath it are going to be other, down here are going to be other routines that I have not yet written. Hold on a sec. All right, the grandfather clock in the house was going off in the background. So, like I said, I'm going to get boatloads of errors in here, but it's okay. It'll be totally fine. In fact, why don't I just do this? I'm going to come in here and starting with this calculate routine, which again, I'm going to have to make massive changes to. I'm going to add all of those other routines in here as well. And they're all going to have a lot of changes. The reason that I'm doing this is not to waste my time, and it's not to waste your time. All right. The reason that I'm doing it is because I want to show that there are similarities and there are differences between doing these programs in this way. All right, so like I said, I'm going to have a boatload of errors. You can see all of them in here, and I'm expecting that. All right, so I'll start cleaning it up in just a couple of moments. All right. All right, let's take a look at what I've got. We'll start it there. So things like message boxes aren't going to make sense anymore. I'm not going to have those. And you'll see I've got a lot of errors, but I've also got a lot of code that looks like it's going to work. All right. Now, I'm going to have to change this. So instead of private like this is going to change to static void calculate. And that's going to already fix some of the errors that I have. Not all of them, but it's going to fix some of them. All right. So keep going here. Do I have keep going? There it is. So that's good. And I'm going to call validate first name. And I should still be able to have that routine in here. I don't know if I brought it in or not, so I'm going to check. There's validate first name. All right. So, let's see. We're going to change this to, we'll pass in the first name. I think we did that. Did we do that before? So we got keep going equal validate first name. Okay. Let's not use keep going anymore. Let's try to totally rewrite this. So I'm doing this on the fly, and either it's going to work really well, or I'll end up not even keeping this particular tape on here. So string first name equals, and we'll set it equal to nothing. First name and we'll make a last name right away too. So this will be last name. All right. So I'm going to just do this. I'm going to say, we'll just say last name equals validate, first name equals validate first name. Okay, get rid of a lot of the stuff that's in here. And we're going to then put in last name is going to be equal to validate last name. That's all good. And we're just going to end it right there for now. Okay, now again, I'm going to get errors here. We're going to be fixing all this stuff as we go on. But let's go to validate first name. There it is. It's not going to return a bool anymore. It's going to return a string, which is going to fix some of those errors. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a local variable string called fn that I'm going to set equal to nothing for the first name. All right, and then I'm going to say here write. Now again, do I have my, I've got my using static system console, good. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say write, please input your first name. Jeez. Okay. And then first name equals read line. All right, that's all fine. Now, for now, just so I get rid of this error here, and that isn't this, that's FN. For now, I'm going to change this, but I'm just going to return FN. Okay, just to make those errors go away. And we'll fix this in just a minute. Now, it's possible you put nothing in there. So I'm going to say this, while FN equal, I'll put it FN dot trim equal nothing. So while there's nothing that has been input for the first name, I'm just going to ask you to do it again. Just like that. So when I get down to here, I should now have a valid first name. Okay. All right. So it validates that there is a value in the first name field. It returns an actual inputted first name. Okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab every bit of this, copy it to the clipboard, and it's also going to become my last name routine, but I'm going to change all occurrences of first name to last name. So this will be validate last name. This will be last name. This will be last name. This will be ln. I could leave it fn because it's just a local variable, but I'm not going to anyway. Last ln. ln. Now I should have done this a lot differently. In fact, maybe I'll just do that just so you can see it. So I'm going to come down to, let's see, the is numeric. That'll probably still work. And if you look in here, now when you look, boy, I got a lot more stuff that's in here that works now than stuff that doesn't work. All right, again, I'm just going to comment out a couple of things here, but my number of errors is going down. All right, so I've got all those earlier errors have now been removed. There's still a lot of errors in here. All right, but I don't want to go on right now. I've got this validate first name and validate last name. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to come in here and grab the rest of this routine, every bit that's in this routine right there, and I want to comment it out. All right. The good news is now I'm down to very few mistakes. All right, so I've got to put the word static in front of both of these. So static, that'll get rid of one error, and static will get rid of the other error. So all my errors are now gone. All I'm trying to show you is this. After I've done these two things, I'm going to put in here a write line, and it's going to say the inputted first name was, and I'll add to that first name, and I'll add a plus and a \n and another plus, and then I'm just going to reproduce this down here, but I'm going to put in the last name. And the inputted last name was, and this will become then last name. All I'm trying to show you here is I think that when I get done with this, it's going to have a first name and a last name, and I'm going to be stuck in a loop until I do put in something that's valid. So, got to change my startup project, and that will change to Payroll 06-Console. All right. So I'm going to leave it blank. Notice it just keep asking me. So I'll put in my first name. Now it asks for my last name. I'll leave that blank. Oh, it's asking for my first name again, so I've got to change that particular message that's in there. And it's got the inputted first name and the inputted last name. So those are set now. The only thing I have to change in here was I've got an incorrect message. So this should say, please input your last name. Let's try that one more time just so you see it. So nothing, first name, Jeff. Now it's waiting for my last name, Scott. Boom. I now have two pieces of my data in there. Okay. So right now, those are the only two things that work, and that's okay. And you'll notice that first name, I don't have my squigglies in here anymore. All right. So let's do this. We'll put in hours worked equal, and we'll call validate hours worked, and hourly rate we're going to call equals validate hourly rate. Now I don't want to get too far in front of myself here, or ahead of myself, so I'm going to comment that one out for now. So we want validate hours worked. Okay, I'm going to keep that right line in there, and I'm going to start getting rid of stuff that's here. In fact, I'm going to get rid of everything else that's in here. I'm going to end up doing a lot of rewriting, but that's okay. All right, so I've got my validate last name. I've got my validate first name. And here's my validate hours worked range. We want to just change that to validate hours worked, and we'll start making some changes in there. So this will become validate hours worked, period. And we're not going to pass anything in. Again, this is going to be filled with errors, but we'll fix it. So I'm going to come in here just like we did before. I'm going to do a decimal. HW equals 0.0M. That's going to be my hours worked. All right. And just like we did before, we're going to come in here and notice we got a bool that's not going to be right anymore. We're going to want to put our hours worked in there, so that's going to have to be a decimal. And for now, just so we get rid of that, those errors that are there, we're going to put in return HW for hours worked. Plus, this will become static. All right, so that'll get rid of most of the errors that we have in there for right now. If we go up above, you'll notice that that is now gone, and that is no longer highlighted. So we validated our first name, we validated our last name. Now I'm going to grab this Is Numeric check that's in here. I may be able to still use it. I don't know. But I'm going to put it down here. You'll see why in just a minute, hopefully. So let's see. So I've got the first name, pretty simple. The last name, pretty simple. And now I'm in here. So I'm again going to say write, enter, and hours worked between, and let's use our constants, plus min hours plus and max hours. Okay, so that should be coming in and asking us to enter a value between 0 and 84. All right. Now, we're going to have a problem here. Okay, we're going to have a problem here because I want to say this, and what I'm going to put in here will work, but it won't work if I run the program and put in bad data. But I'm going to say this, HW equals convert.toDecimal read line. All right, so that is going to come in, and it is going to take whatever I put in there and attempt to convert it to a double. All right, and go through and do everything we want it to do. And that's totally fine. We do have to check to make sure it's within range, but what if this fails? We were checking that before with the validate is numeric. All right. So I'm going to see if I can do this. While so this is going to return true or false if we do call that validate is numeric. Let's create another variable here. We'll make it a string, and we're going to call it HW for hours worked, str, hours worked string. And we're going to set that equal to the empty string. And this one, this decimal will be hours worked decimal, DEC. Oops. All right. And this will end up then, oops, come on. Value, we'll say inputted. Okay. And don't worry, I've got errors here. It'll work its way out in just a bit. All right. So I'm going to do this. Instead of doing the convert to decimal, I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to comment that line out. And I'm going to say HW str, so the string for this, equals read line. All right. Then I'm going to call the validate is numeric. Now that's going to return either true or false, so I am going to need some kind of a Boolean in here. And we'll just call it valid, and we'll set it equal to false. We'll assume it doesn't work. You can assume whatever you want to assume in here. It really and truly will not matter. And I'm going to just put in here Boolean flag. All right, so we're going to come in here and we're going to say valid equals is, what do we call that routine? Validate is numeric. And we're going to pass into that, HW str. All right, so that's going to validate that indeed what we passed in was numeric or what we passed in was not numeric. All right, and let's go down to that is numeric and look at it here. Bool, decimal test, output test, input, okay, bool. So return this, that should be fine. And it's giving me an error because, again, I have to go in here and put in static. When you are dealing with routines that deal with main, they have to be static. All right, so you'll notice that that's now fixed. Okay. So let's see. So if valid, which means that I returned it, now I've got a number in there. Okay, that's all I know. I don't know if it's a valid number or not, but I know it's a number. So if valid, now I can do this. We'll do this. HW des equals convert dot to double HW str. So now I know I can legally convert it. All right. So why is it giving me an error? It's not to double, it's to decimal. Okay. All right. So that's all fine and dandy. But what I want to do here is I want to come in and check to make sure it's within range. So, and this is validating the hours worked. So I've now, right there, I validated that it's numeric. All right, but now I'm going to say valid equals, and I think we had a thing within range here, didn't we? This is hourly rate range. I guess I removed it. So let's put it back. So we'll copy this. And we'll rewrite this, and this will be validate hours worked range. All right, static. HW, 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 hours. That's the problem with erasing a lot of this stuff. That there. It's going to validate whether the hours worked was valid or not, i.e. between 0 and 84, which is min hours and max hours. All right, looks like I'm missing a paren there for whatever reason. Okay, so I converted to decimal, fine. Now I want to say valid equals and whoopsie. I've got a call here, validate hours worked, to make sure that's within range. And I want to pass in the actual hours worked. Okay, and it's hours worked decimal. All right, so if it's still valid, I can return this. Now, I may get an error for what I'm going to try to do. I'm not sure yet. So I'm going to say here, if valid, return HWDEC. Okay, so if it was valid, we're going to return that. Now, right now, not all paths return a value. This is where I might run into a problem. Because I'm going to say else, and I'm not going to do a return here, so I might get an error. All I want to do is I want to call this routine again. That's why I said it may give me an error here. I don't know. And I want to take a couple minutes to try to explain what I'm attempting to do here. But like I said, I could end up getting an error here. So what are we doing in English? It says here, not all paths return a value, which is true. Okay. So what this is being called, this validate hours worked, is being called right there. Okay, and I'm attempting to put a value into validate hours worked. And what I'm saying here is come in here and tell the person to enter an hours worked between 0 and 84. All right. So here we've got this, and we're validating whether or not it is numeric. Maybe what I ought to be doing is I ought to be doing all my validation in here. Instead of trying to write 2 routines, just write 1 routine. The problem is what I want to do is twofold here. I want to make sure A, it's numeric, and B, it's within range. All right. Now, I'm going to, for lack of better words, I'm going to cheese out here, and I'm going to do this. This true false here, all right, I'm going to change it like this. So I'm going to say, if it's valid, then return it. Otherwise, I'm going to return a default value. So I'm going to make a default value here. So I'm going to say here decimal In fact, let's make it a default constant. So we've got a minimum hours, we've got a maximum hours. Let's pretty this up. We're not going to do that. So const int, and I'm going to call this def hours, and I'm going to set it equal to 40. In fact, I'm looking at this, and my hours really shouldn't be ints. So I'm going to make that a double. Let's even make it a decimal. That's fine. I'm going to make all of these decimals. Really should have changed it in the other ones, but they're working, so I'm going to leave them alone. All right, now these are all going to give me errors, so I'm going to say 0.0m, 0.0m, 0.0m. That should fix all of those errors. Okay. So I've got my minimum number of hours worked, my maximum number of hours worked, and what I'm calling now my default number of hours worked. Since I've got a default for that, I really should have a default for my rate as well. So we'll call this def rate. Okay, and I'm going to set that equal to the default pay rate. Just going to make it $25. Okay, that's totally fine. And this will be the default hourly rate. It'll just make things simpler. Could I do it the other way? The answer is yes, but it might take a lot more time than I'm willing to give to that in what I'm doing here right now. So. All right, that's all been fixed. Now, the way I'm going to change this is to validate the hours worked here. I'm returning a decimal. So if it's valid, I'm doing all that, and I'm going to return that. Otherwise, I'm going to return the default hours. So if you put something that was not within range here, it's going to return false, and I'm just going to reset it to 40. All right, I just think that'll make what I'm doing here a little bit easier. So as we're working our way down here, we now have this. So we're inputting a couple things here. And all I'm going to do is I put these in here, is I'm going to keep adding to this write line statement. So I'm going to say here, the inputted hours worked was, and then I will put in, oh, come on. Hours worked. Now I'm getting an error because I didn't put in my ending double quote there. There. All right, so let's check what we've got done so far. If I don't put anything in, it's going to keep prompting me. If I don't put anything in, it's going to keep prompting me. Now, what if I put in something here? Now, notice it changed it to the default because I just hit enter. However, if I run it again and I put in something that's within range, and I'll just put in 60, and it took it. So that is working just fine. Now, in this message that I'm putting in here that says it must be between, I'm going to add in here the word hours. Why did I do that? Well, I want to show you why I did that. So again, I put in Jeff, Scott. Now it says enter hours work between 0 and 84 hours. Okay. So if I put in a number that's between 0 and 84 here, so I put in 37, boom, it takes it. If I don't put in something that's within range, so if I do put in, let's put in a negative number, it changed it to 40. So now I'm good all the way through my hours worked. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add the hourly rate. So this one is now commented out. All right, so I'm validating my first name, validating my last name, validating my hours worked, that it's between this and this. If it is not within range, set hours worked to a default value of 40. All right, so that's all fine. I'm going to grab all of that code that's right here and the code that follows it, because I know now it works. And at this hourly rate range, I probably can leave that. Actually, should be okay. We just have to change the name. So let's grab this, copy it to the clipboard, and paste that back in right here. So we're going to have to make some changes. So just trying to fix my documentation here. So this will check the hourly rate. Was between 0 and 99.99, which we called min rate and max rate. If it is not within range, set hourly rate to a default value of 25.0. All right, so this is now validate hourly rate. All right, and this will become hourly rate string, hourly rate decimal. And this will say enter an hourly rate between min rate and max rate. And we'll just, we'll change that to per hour. All right. We're going to do the same stuff in here. And this will be validate hourly rate range. If it's valid, we'll return it. Otherwise, we're going to set it as a default rate. All right. So this is going to be a static. Hourly rate, hourly rate. It's good. I may be done with this one. It's giving me a couple errors here. Let's see. Get rid of that. Okay, so now hopefully I'm okay up to here. So this is the input hourly rate. Okay, so hopefully I've got everything in here and it's all in here correct. So again, nothing. Okay, it doesn't take it. Doesn't take it. I put in a valid. Now if I put in an hourly rate that's out of range, it should be setting it to 25. It did not. Set it to 37, so I've got an error in my code. And that's when I'm setting it to the default. That's default hours. It says return default rate. Didn't I set the default rate correctly up above? Set there. No longer need this default name unknown, so I can get rid of that. Default hours work, that should be okay. Default rate. Why did it give me 37? Oh, I know why. It's because when I'm printing it all out in here, this should say hourly rate. Okay, that should fix that. Let's try it one more time. Now, I'm not going to put a value in here for this, and it did set it back to the default of 25. So that's good. Great. So I'm up ready for my gross pay now. I've got first name equal validate first name, last name equal validate last name, hours worked equal validate hours worked, hourly rate equals validate hourly rate. So it's looking pretty good right now. Finally, I'm going to say gross pay equals calculate gross pay. All right, now in order to do that, I will need to give it a couple things, and those being the hours worked and the hourly rate. All right, I'm going to immediately come in here and do this one. Plus the calculated gross pay was, and this will be gross pay. Let's pretty these up just a bit. So we'll put in here dot to string, and hours worked, we'll just make that an F2. And for hourly rate, we'll do again a dot to string, and we'll make that currency. And we'll also do the same thing right here. All right, so let's do our calculate gross pay. Validate hourly range, validate is numeric. This is going to be validating our totals, and this build message box doesn't make sense anymore. I'm already actually doing that. So there's calculate gross pay, and I'm passing in the hours worked and the hourly rate. Well, that's good. So that's all in there, and then I should be able to return the gross. Do I still have an error in here? Calculate gross pay. What is it telling me? Oh, it may have to be turned into a static. That's probably what the error is. And there's that. So let's do a save. We haven't done one in a while, and run this. So Jeff Scott, let's say I worked 40 hours, $10 an hour. And there's my information. Okay, that's good. Let's run it again, and let's put in invalid values. So right now, I don't remember if I am, you do have to enter something here and here. This should now take the default. That should take the default, 40 and 25. That worked. All right. And if I run it again and put in stuff that's out of range, so I put in 100 for the hours worked, and I put in 100 for that, it again defaults. Okay, everything appears to be working here. Let's change this to calculated. Gross pay was, okay. So I now am validating my first name. I'm validating my last name. I'm validating my hours worked. I'm validating my hourly rate. All right, so all of that stuff works. I've got my Is Numeric. This is my update the totals. I'm just going to move that so it's under my calculate gross pay. Don't have to do this, but I'm just lining stuff up with the way it's actually called. I don't need this button clear anymore, so I can just get rid of that. And now I'm putting that back in here. So what do I want to change here? So the last thing that I want to do is this, and that is it's just about there. So I want to update my employees, so reset that, so bump that up. So plus plus total employees, that's fine. Already done my gross pay, and I want to update my total gross pay. Okay, so I've got both those. And I'm not returning anything. This will have to be static. All right, and I'm passing into this. Well, let's look. Do I have total employees and total gross pay? Do I still have those in there? I am going to make those global. Okay, there they are. Total employees. And total gross pay. So I do have both of those. But let's see, what am I passing in down here? I'm not calling that routine. So I'm going to come in here and call the routine now. And again, that routine is at the bottom here, and it's called update. So I'm going to do this. I don't need this to be an out anymore. So got rid of some of my errors already. So I want to update my employee totals, and I want to pass in hours worked. Oops. I want to pass in hours worked. I want to pass in hourly rate. And I want to pass in gross pay. All right, so that all looks good. Plus \n plus, so let's say total number of employees. That's good. Plus tote, whatever we call that up above here, tote employees. Dot toString. All right, plus and total company payroll now is plus tote gross pay. Getting an error here. Oh, these are going to have to be static. That's why I'm getting the error. Again, when you are dealing with variables and when those variables are using something that's directly connected to main, you have to go back in and make them static. So that's why I got that. I'm getting this error now because I got to type in tote gross pay dot to string and make that C. All right, believe it or not, I need an ending parenthesis for the whole thing here. Okay, I may be finished. So let's look. Let's run it about 3 times. So Jeff Scott, 40 hours a week, $10 an hour. All right, me, there's 1 employee, total in payroll is 40. Okay, now the problem is right now it's not in a loop. Okay, so let's see. Let's just come in here and say this. While 1 equal 1, which means basically I'm putting it into an infinite loop here on purpose. And I want to get rid of this here. And let's do this. Okay, now I want to grab these 2 lines that are right here and put those outside of the loop. Okay, and that will then give me the total number of employees when I'm done, and it'll also give me the total payroll when I'm done. Okay, so it means, oops, I've got that, so I don't know why that is even in here, but okay, so that fixed that. And I've got to end this. All right. I've got private in there. I don't need this button routine. So that's gone. And it looks like somehow I'm missing a curly brace. All right, hopefully I put that curly brace back in the right place, but we'll see real quick. All right, now we still have a problem here with this right line. Unreachable code. You know what? I'm just going to keep putting in the total number every time. Not exactly the way I'd like to write this, but this will work. So we will put in another blank line. So let's try this. Now this is going to technically run forever, so I'll have to manually break out of it, just so you know that. So Jeff Scott 40 10. Okay, looks like everything worked. I need a couple blank spaces there, but that's still okay. Sandy Scott 60 20. Looks like overtime was created, and 1400 plus 400 is 1800. Good. Taylor Scott 2050. Another 1000. That all looks like it's working. Mackenzie Scott 60 80. Good. And Chloe Scott, and we'll just use the defaults for that. Okay. So I'll have to do a control break to actually get out of here. Okay, that's totally fine. All right, this again, I'm going to put in here a backslash and a couple of them. And I'm going to put in 2 backslash T's. I'm going to put in a backslash T's into all of these. And I think I actually like it better when this is literally connected. Yeah, this, don't worry about the error. It's going to go away in literally about 10 seconds. Okay. I don't need that \n. So I'm going to try to run this one more time. I'm already close to an hour, but I'm going to run this one more time to make sure it works. Okay, I thought I pushed it over, but evidently I didn't. Oh, just the output I pushed over. Okay. And as please input your first name should also. So delete. Let's break out of here. This will T. Oops. I'm just doing, now I'm doing cosmetic things. I don't think there's anything else that's inputted, so that should be okay. All right, it should look a lot nicer running it now. All right, so please input your first name, Jeff Scott, 3520, and there's my information. Okay, this I should have put a couple of line breaks in there, but I didn't. Sandy Scott will have the defaults, and it looks like it's working. Okay. So the only thing I want to fix is where before you ask for the first name, let's really pretty this up. So before we ask for the first name, right here, we're going to do this. We're going to put in here hit enter to continue. Read line, and then I'm going to say console.clear. All right, finally I'm going to move this down just a little bit there. Now let's see if I'm finished. Oh, it did say please. It should have. Okay, that's fine. Please input your first name, Jeff. Oh, okay. What is the problem here? Maybe I don't even have to do this. Maybe I can just come in and do a console.clear right here. So please input your first name. Please input your, no, why is it doing it there? I don't know. It's the way console.clear works, I'm sure. So I don't want to put that here. I think I want to put it here. Try it again. Okay, I don't know why I'm getting that extra line break in there, but 40, 10. See, it's just doing a clear, and I want it to do a read line first. Darn it. To continue. I don't do enough work, to be honest with you, with console apps that I'm as good at this as I should be. hit enter to continue. There, please input your first name. Jeff, Scott, I gotta fix that line break that's in there. 40, 30, okay, got that. Now hit enter to continue. There we go. All right, so gotta fix that. So that please enter your last name. I've one too many there. And where it says hit this to continue. I'm getting there. I'm coming right to the end of the program here. So hit enter to continue. Jeff, Scott, still need to get rid of that line break. 45, 20. There we go. All right, so where we enter the last name, I don't need this. And where it says hit enter to continue, I'm going to close that. This should be it. Final version. Jeff, Scott, 40, 20, 800. Hit enter to continue. Sandy, Scott, we'll just take the defaults. That works. Taylor, Scott, put in out of range values. And again, it takes the defaults. Put in the max. And again, right here, I'm just going to do a control break. Now, I'm already up over an hour, but I very, very quickly just want to walk through what I did. I used pretty much the same global constants I had before, but I added a default for hours and a default for rate. Other than that, I believe it's identical. I used the same two global variables. Main now calls calculate. Calculate is pretty much a driver. All right. And this right line statement that I have here, I could have put that into its own routine too, and I probably should. All right. So let's grab that. All right. And then we're going to say here, display all inputs and outputs. Now, when we get there, and outputs, that'll go down at the bottom. And again, it's called display all inputs and outputs. So static void display all inputs and outputs. I'm going to get errors here. Why? Because I have to pass in all this information that's right here. So I'm going to need, give us a chance to clean this up a little. String first name, string last name, decimal hours worked, decimal hourly rate, decimal gross pay. What else do we have? I don't need to pass in the total employees and the total gross pay. So this will be, here will be FN, LN, HW, HR, and GP, which will give me a chance to clean this thing up a little bit. Let me pause for a minute. All right, the clock was going again. So here, there's first name, there's last name, there's hours worked, there's hourly rate, there's gross pay, there's total employees, oops, and there's total gross pay. Okay, that is actually done, but I'm going to have to make sure first name, last name, hours worked, hourly rate, gross pay are passed up here. there is still an error, and that is I'm going to have to pass in first name, last name, hours worked, hourly rate, and gross pay. That should remove any and all errors I have in the program. And I'll run it one last time in a second. So here's my, I'm going to say here local program variables, and they're local because if I need to set them someplace, they have to be passed in, as you can see right here. So hopefully I wrote this in a clear enough method. Validate the first name, then validate the last name, then validate the hours worked, then validate the hourly rate. Once those are all valid, calculate the gross pay, and that will need the hours worked and the hourly rate. Once I've got that, update my totals. All right, how do I have to update my totals? Well, I actually think to update my totals, I don't know if I need hours worked and hourly rates, so let's quickly look at those. I don't. The only thing I need in here is the gross pay. So I will change that one. It's going to give me an error right now when I get to that point, but I don't need these. Only pass in the information that must be passed in. Then to display all inputs and outputs, I'm displaying the first name, last name, hours worked, hourly rate, and gross pay. The other two, the total number of employees and the total gross pay, are both global variables. Okay, so that is, I'm looking here and it looks like even though the program works, that's where that curly brace should be. So that one that I put down at the bottom of the routine here is wrong. It's that one. All right, so give me 5 more minutes, please. And we have here a simple, let's just put down here a more complex C# payroll console payroll app. So we've got our same constants, except I added def hours and def rate. Other than that, it's everything we had before. We have the same global variables, total gross pay and total employees. Main still calls calculate. Calculate now is basically used as a driver. I'm putting it into an infinite loop to validate first name, set that to first name, validate the last name and set it to last name, validate the hours worked and set it to hours worked, validate the hourly rate and set it to hourly rate. Now I've changed the validate first name and last name. Previously, if you didn't put anything in, I just set it to unknown. I could still do that, but now I'm just forcing you to put in a value. All right, then I'm calculating the gross pay, which needs the hours worked and the hourly rate. I'm updating my totals, and all I need for that is the gross pay. And then I'm displaying all my inputs, which are these 4 things, and the calculated output, which is this, plus the 2 global variables, which are total employees and total gross pay. So this validates the first name. While it's blank, we make you put something in there. So when you hit this line, you must have put something into the first name, and it can't just be hitting the space bar. All right. Then we do the same exact thing with the last name. Then we come in and we validate our hours worked. This part of validating the hours worked, this part that's right here, is just validating that indeed it's numeric. If it is numeric, I convert it, and then I validate it within range. If it is within range, I accept it. If it's not within range, I just kind of punt it here and set it to a default for hours worked. Then I do virtually the same thing. So this is just checking the hours worked to see if it's less than min or greater than max. If so, return false, otherwise return true. So this does the same thing, but with the hourly rate. So again, this is verifying that indeed it's numeric. If it is, it's converting it and checking with it that it's within range. If it is within range, we set it accordingly. Otherwise, we set it to the default. So again, this validate here says that if it's out of range, return false. Otherwise, return true. This is my check in here to make sure that it's numeric. All right. This is the same code exactly that I had in the previous one in my GUI app, except I remove the stuff and I'm just using variables now because there's nothing GUI to use in here. All right. So we come in here and do all this. I don't think we need this anymore. So I can get rid of that. That sets up the gross pay either to straight time or to non-straight time. So we can change this to employee worked greater than 40 hours, has OT coming. This again just updates the two. So this is updating our global variables. So I am incrementing the total employees counter by 1, and I'm also incrementing the total gross pay by the current gross pay. And then finally, I come in and print everything out. Now it should still work even though I moved a few things around, etc. Let's check. So hit enter to continue. Put first name Jeff, Scott, 3520. Okay, 700 with 1 employee. Hit enter, clearing. Mark Jones, 5020. Got the overtime, that's 1100. 1100 plus the 700 I had previously is 1800, and there are 2 employees. Mary Green. Say she worked 70 hours and makes $70 an hour. Notice she got overtime. There's 3 employees, and this should be the result of adding the 3 together. Now, I could give myself another way to get out here. I'm not that concerned, so I'm just going to do a control break, and it gets me out. Okay, so that's this particular example. What I'm going to do when I come back, and I've already gone and started doing a bunch of this, so let me first do a save all, and I'm going to close, and I'm going to close, and I'm going to close. So last thing, next I'm going to come back and do my Payroll 7 app right here. So I want to set that to be my startup project. And I've already gone in, changed that to 7, etc. But in chapter 7 in the text, so hopefully from 6 now I put in that one I just did, I explained to you some control structures and you saw some more methods in a console app. In the next one, I'm going to change the way I'm handling those errors to put in exception handlings to validate my data. All right, and I will be back with that one shortly. Thanks for watching.